When we were just old enough that we weren't real young anymore, we moved from our old home in the country to a new house close to the town. It took months to pack up all our belongings. It was a special house. I'd been born in that house, my sister too, though my other sister, the older one, was born in a different town altogether, and thus knew a thing or two more than either my sister, the younger one, or me knew about what different houses had. A home in the country had, for instance, coyotes calling at night. They woke you up and made your heart leap out of your chest. For those who haven't heard a real pack of coyotes erupting out of the silence of the night, the sound is bound to unsettle you. Even for us who grew up in that house, which was a house that simply had coyotes around it every now and then, the sound was liable to make us tremble. But eventually we'd remember. It's only coyotes calling, not a gaggle of high-pitched witches cackling coldly in the night. That house in the country had many things like that. Things my sister, the younger one, and I just assumed houses had. We didn't think there was anything unusual about the faces in the ceiling. We figured all houses had ceilings that would start to have faces in them if you stared at them long enough. Those ceilings had big wood logs that went all the way across in that wood. There were patterns in the grain and knots in the wood that would become eyes and mouths and noses if you stared at them long enough. That was simply just another thing the house had. Well, what my sister, the younger one, and I didn't know was that other houses didn't have things like that. Things like coyotes calling in the night, or faces in the ceiling, or winds outside that swirled up a bunch of dust and spun it around. We called them dust devils. But that other houses didn't have things like that was something we learned fairly quickly once we moved to the newer house. You could stare at those white ceilings as long as you liked, and there wouldn't be any faces in them. But the other thing about different houses took us longer to learn. It was in that first week after we'd moved all our belongings to that new house. During the week we started going to a new school in town, a school with bigger classes and bigger kids in those classes. It was during that week that my sister started saying she was seeing things she wasn't used to seeing. Like what? I'd asked her, though I really didn't want to know. She had a way of describing things that made it hard to get to sleep. Things in the picture frames in the hall, she said. Things reflected off the glass. Things that aren't there. Well, that unsettled me. And for many nights after, my mind would go bounding off, chasing all sorts of frightening thoughts. And I'd try to bound off in another direction, but those things she saw would already be there, reflecting off whatever I was trying to go after. And all the while my heart was going pa-tump, a-tump, pa-tump, a-tump, pa-tump, a-tump, like a scared jackrabbit trapped in a cold white corner. It seemed darker in that house than it ever was in the old one, and it was on a night like that, when I'd finally fallen into some sort of sleep, a noise outside my bedroom door woke me right out of that uneasy slumber. It was the sound of whooshing wind, not wind outside, but wind right in the hallway outside my bedroom door. It sounded like the front door had opened right up and let in some sort of a dust devil that was now swirling madly through the hallway, and my bedroom door is going pa-tump, a-tump, pa-tump, a-tump, pa-tump, a-tump, as if the dust devil were banging it back and forth, and I can't even tell you what my heart was up to, because it leaped right out of my sternum and was bounding off like an out-of-its-mind jackrabbit. And it was darker than ever, and then all at once it was over. Silence. No sound of the front door closing, no nothing. All was as peaceful as could be. The next morning, I asked my sister if she had heard it. Hadn't heard a thing. Slept through the whole night through. Maybe the door wasn't properly closed, she said, and the wind blew it open. Maybe Mom or Dad got up and closed it. It seemed believable enough, so I asked them. They hadn't heard a thing. Slept the whole night through. Must be one of those things, my sister, the older one, told me. Every house has them, only they're different for every house. You'll get used to the ones here, you'll see. And I did. And later I moved here and there, and I've lived in all sorts of houses, and I know now that every house has something, especially if it's special.